Welcome to Inspiring STEM's podcast program discussing innovations in scientific publishing and science communications. Our guests are key opinion leaders in organizations working to advance and to quite often disrupt the status quo. My name is Martin Delahanty and I will be your host. Before we begin, please remember the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. We very much value your support. My guest today is Ryan James Jessup, who is owner and sole proprietor for socialwebbranding.com, which is a consulting firm that focuses on research visibility and societal impact of publications for publishers. A very warm welcome to the program.
Thank you, Martin. I appreciate being here. It's such a great opportunity.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. Let's begin with you just telling us briefly about your background and your current role.
Sure. So I finished my joint JD MPA program in 2016 and I got sucked into scholarly publishing. I got a quick education working for the world's largest oncology publication. I worked for them from 2016 to 2022. I was the director of external and legal affairs there, and I managed all post-publication processes on behalf of that portfolio as well. Then I moved over to JMIR Publications, where I took the lead on Google Ads, editorial expansion, and I worked as a liaison between their communications and knowledge translation department and each one of their managing editors and editor-chiefs for each one of their 30 journals. Now I've started consulting. I've opened up my own shop, socialwebbranding.com. I focus on research visibility for authors. So anybody that wants to drive their alt-metric scores, I offer a variety of services to do that. And I do the same thing for publishers, for demonstrating societal impact, raising impact factors, automating editorial board expansion, stuff like that. Currently, I am interested in working on peer review research integrity and aiming my eyes at offering some new services and products for the industry.
And I know you've got an innovative and perhaps controversial vision for a more structured and professionalized third-party commercialized peer review system. With your diverse background, how do you anticipate this third-party commercialized peer review transforming scholarly publications, particularly in relation to platforms that fostering a marketplace for peer review services?
Yeah, well, obviously, it's not a product that can just come to fruition itself. You got to have partners. You got to have other people playing a role in it to really get that credibility that you need to offer a service like this. The main question is, why would peer review be commercialized at all? And obviously, there is a new burden in our industry where peer review and research integrity is calling the shots, right? And on a day-to-day basis, organizations and production managers and peer review managers are facing scrutiny. They're dealing with many issues: research fabrication, authorship after death, authorship for sale. AI has introduced a whole new level of deep fakes into it. And so with that strain, it really illustrates the same problem that was happening with IRBs inside universities, where people needed IRB approval and they needed to get through that process, and universities were overburdened. It was too much of a demand for their infrastructure to be able to provide that service in a timely and efficient manner. And so it got commercialized. Now IRBs are fast and they serve the community better. And so why not do it with peer review? I think it's a simple transition, right? And so for those organizations who've got it down or who are dealing with it properly and have the proper investments in their infrastructure, they can tune their peer review to be a little bit better by maybe implementing some of the services that I'll be talking about here today. But for those that are overburdened by it and can't figure it out, here's a new option, right?
Really interesting. And so how, in practicality, would you blend a commercialized peer review offering with the pre-review services, such as those from Publons and others? Yeah,
that's a great question. So really, it starts with crowd review in a sense in my analysis, and there will be a white paper published about this or a blog post, so people can read it more in depth. Pre-review and what I'll be talking about last in our conversation here today differ in the matter of intensity, right? And so crowd review all the way on this end is going to be the least authoritative peer review, the cheapest model. It's going to be non-universal, not accepted at other publishers. It's it's really not going to work, right? I mean, unless you add in a pre-review service, unless you bring in traditional. And so as I speak about this, each stage in the peer review that we'll talk about here today will increase in intensity. The last thing that I will talk about are universal peer reviews that would be accepted at all publishers. For you to get a universal peer review, you must complete all the prior 6 steps in peer review: crowd review, pre-review, traditional peer review, image forensics, expert error spotters. Then your peer review can become portable and travel to other publishers. So at the highest level, your peer review becomes a universal object. Right now, I'll talk to you a little bit about crowd review and pre-review. I think it fits right in, right? There's organizations that are offering these like Publons and an actual organization called pre-review. You can pay these organizations money to provide feedback on a paper prior to your submission. So you can get some expert feedback there before you even subject it to a possible submission. So crowd review, pre-review happen before submission. They are already integrated, but they are just a barrier to entry to honestly before submission. And it's something that doesn't hold as much weight as what we'll be speaking about.
How will this then strengthen the traditional peer review process and significance, and also how will it impact reviewer participation and review quality? We know, as you mentioned, the real challenges in gaining participation of reviewers. There's not sufficient number of reviewers to review the volume of papers that are currently being processed. So how do you see this working?
Yeah, so when you're moving into a traditional peer review, I think something like reviewer credits is the heart of beginning a universal model, a structured model, a professionalism model. I think reviewer credits on the traditional review point brings people into a investment or equity line in their the time that they spend doing peer review. Last I read, there was something like 80 million hours on a yearly basis that are going into traditional peer review. If that paper gets rejected and those peer reviews are wasted, it's a waste for everybody. If some credits are handed out and it becomes a universal and structured, accepted method of being able to provide peer reviewers some equity in their work, whether it's used or not, I think that's really just a basic threshold for professionalizing regular peer review. However, when you complete a crowd review or a pre-review service prior to traditional peer review, that's really where I'm talking about the commercialization of it. So there will be publishers who choose one of those three. In the commercialized model, we are looking for people to complete crowd review, complete pre-review, go into traditional peer review, receive reviewer credits regardless of acceptance, rejection, or modification request. And so it will continue to build as I illustrate my point here. But the integration of a reviewer credits into every traditional peer review program is the basis for the ability to commercialize peer review. Something that goes along with it, though, is continuing medical education credit peer review is rewarding credits. Not just here's your credit, but your credit is based on the quality of your peer review, right? So you get one credit for a smaller peer review that's not as in-depth, doesn't talk about reproducibility, doesn't analyze the images, doesn't check the references. You get 3 credits when you do all that, right? That's another essential part of reviewer credits being involved in the traditional review process, is awarding not just a credit, but a merit-based credit. And so to move forward, commercializing traditional peer review involves the prior 2, but it also involves a metric-based reviewer credit that gets awarded. Doesn't matter whether the paper is accepted or rejected.
And I guess it's one thing offering the capability that you've just described there to tick off reproducibility and other research integrity components to the peer review system. We know also that there's just an inherent challenge in training reviewers, particularly early career researchers, and adopting them within the peer reviewer pool. So how might you address that?
Yeah, so I will be launching a website called peerreviewme.org. On that website, we're going to be training peer reviewers. We're going to be talking to them about the differences between credit levels that can be obtained for a quality peer review, examples of different peer reviews. But what's very important here is the span in industries. This is where the training really differentiates. For medical peer reviews, peer-reviewed reproducibility, image forensic, funders, all that type of stuff going on in scientific medical peer reviewing is much more intense, much more focused, and much more guidelined than something in the softer sciences, right? So by clearly training peer reviewers about quality, length, introspectiveness, by rewarding merit-based credits, it won't matter what industry you're in. You're going to have a source to understand what an in-depth peer review is like in your field and what a non-in-depth peer review is like in your field. But in the training that we'll be offering, in the commercialization, in the credits that we'll be offering at peerreviewme.org, we will be building a list of interest-based peer reviewers that we will be able to solicit for crowd review, pre-review, traditional peer review, paid error spotting, image forensics. And as you get to the more intense levels of peer review that'll be offered, it's required that a paid error spotter has a speciality in your field. And so we will be creating a diverse network of high quality peer reviewers that are available through our commercialized system.
You mentioned images there, and image integrity has also been challenged quite severely. We seem to rely on sleuths like Elizabeth Bick to come in and save the day. And I know others are working on systems to try and detect fraud and manipulation in images through the peer review process. That is a particular challenge. So how might you address that?
Yes, sir. Elizabeth Bick is a huge inspiration for this project. She has led the fight. And really a question for me was, how can we make what she's doing a viable product to better the entire industry? And so, she has inspired me for what I call paid error spotters, which I'll be talking about next. But she has blazed the trail for image forensics. It's a huge thing. Image forensics is what I call a deep fake, right? Deep fakes used to be just like a recording or something. They extend now to images, videos, GIFs, any type of asset that you're creating. The rat testes image that came out, everybody saw it. I wrote an article about deep fakes at that time and how image manipulation was what it was when they turned it sideways, when they changed the density of the coloration. Now they are generating something. They are deep faking things. That threat extends now beyond what we have ever expected before. And it is not only a small group of people who are diligently defrauding science, but somebody could just honestly put in all the information, totally honestly, into an AI and get something fake. And if they don't look at it, peer review doesn't look at it, crowd review, if we don't put it through the measures, honest mistakes can happen here. And so the level of deceit has increased as now it's just an honest mistake. And image forensics has to be a bigger part of peer review. My experience when I've questioned peer review managers about how did that slip through, right? The answer was we don't really look at images. Some peer reviewers do, some don't. Image forensic processes need to be an integral part of a peer review process.
That has been a focus, and publishers have been looking at how to apply tools to spot, as you say, fakes or malevolent activity. But I always like to flip it on the other side and just see the way in which AI can augment and create positive contribution towards the publishing process, in particular peer review. So maybe you could expand a little bit more on your thoughts on how AI will augment your service and more generally within peer review.
Sure. So, if you're going to try to cut a corner or use that to fill a hole or a gap in your research, we will find that section and we will know that it was written by AI. And it doesn't need to be just a simple analysis like that. You could take a bigger look at the commonality of phraseology and words that are being used and very distinctly say, these papers have something in common that these don't. And so I think more trends will come to light like that as AI detects itself and becomes better at analyzing images and phraseology to point out outliers or trends in developments of certain usage of verbiage.
For many years, in fact, probably for the last 15, 20 years, there's been various tests and pilots amongst publishers for portable peer review, and it never really seems to have taken off. Is that still an ambition for us? And can we actually achieve that?
I'll tell you, portable peer review might not work because there is no structured or professionalized peer review that's universal across a single discipline, let alone all of the disciplines. That's why for portable peer review to be successful, it will work with my model. Only does a peer review become portable if a researcher or an institution has accomplished the prior steps of peer review in my offerings. The last one is paid error spotters, right after image forensics. Paid error spotters are like Elizabeth Bick. That is such a high level of authoritative peer review where you have an expert you are paying to review it. So the idea is that only the organizations that qualify for portable peer review will value research integrity at the highest level. They will be investing their money, their time, their process to bringing a paper from a crowd review to pre-review, traditional peer review, image forensics, and then bring in an paid error spotter. After that, they will get a stamp on that paper from my organization that says this paper has been peer reviewed by peerreviewme.org. This is a universal peer review. It is qualified to travel to other publishers. I can verify the processes that have gone along. And so publishers who buy my service will be a portable peer review approved publisher. And so my vision would be that large publishers buy into this service, that this service expands, and that there are multiple large publishers with the portable peer review stamp of approval, and that when you are rejected because of scope or because of, not an essential flaw in your science, you don't waste those 80 million hours. You get your credits given to all your people based on the merit of the peer review that they have received through that process. It is all documented, all of your paid error spotting, image forensics, crowd reviews. You get your stamp and you say, I was rejected because of scope. Can you consider my paper? They still need to go through their peer review process at the next publisher. They're still going to have their own checks that they go through. It's not like an automatic yes, but it speeds things up, right? It helps a person meet a deadline. It helps you meet the next funding deadline. It's imperative to make value in all peer reviews that have occurred. And that portable peer review approval only comes with a total structured and professional peer review process. And so portable peer review is at the top tier of our service offerings. It is only available if you have purchased the other 6 types of peer review. It is a stamp of high level of research integrity. Only the top research integrity publishers will have that approval.
So you've described now a professional and commercialized peer review model, considering that the peer review system to date has been reliant upon the goodwill of researchers within the academic community to peer review their own work whilst maintaining commercial publishing operations, which is still for many people outside of commercial publishing, that seems quite a unique model. But, making that then transition to a much more commercialized professional peer review system, what do you think are just the challenges within the research community just to communicate the value?
Yeah, well, it really comes down to your investments, right? There are organizations who have invested a lot in peer review. They might see my model and they might pick parts of it. They might work to integrate all the different types of peer review. Other ones that are not so invested or more open to it, I think it's a really easy transition. I don't think there's any resistance at all.
You mentioned a paper that you're putting together. When will that be out?
Right now, I would say a few weeks. We should get some details on the reviewer credit side of this, and this conversation should continue to build, right? I'm just taking the risk of talking about the vision. I'm not saying this is all the answers. We do have the website ready, and the service will come, peerreviewme.org.
Very good. So Ryan, this has been a great conversation, and in the Inspiring STEM podcast series, we like to cover people who are not just maintaining the status quo, particularly, but particularly disrupting it. So I think you're doing that in a good way, because it does need disruption. And so I wish you well with that, and we will be looking out for your work over the coming months. For the moment, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing more about your commercialized peer review vision and product in the future. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. I can't thank you enough. It was a great opportunity, and you're a good host. I appreciate it.
Thank you.